Just breathe. Something I shouldn't have to remind myself to do, but at the moment, the task was easier said than done. Pushing the air out of my tight lungs proved simple enough, but in through the nose was a different story, as each inhale brought with it an eye-watering fetor of body odor, liquor, cigarette smoke, and vomit pooled somewhere in the dark corners. I could handle the stench, as well as the flashing lights, the pulsating music, and a sea of Norman bodies dry-humping to the beat. But making it all exponentially worse were the drunken mind signatures, swirling and gyrating and pinging all over the place. A nightclub in the middle of a seaside tourist village was probably the last place a relatively new telepath should be hanging out. Yet here I was. I hadn't been off the Amadis Island for 8 months, since the trial last September, and didn't particularly want to be here either. I preferred to be in one of my usual spots, next to either Rena or Lilith, both still comatose from the dark magic inflicted by Kali the sorceress. But my Amadis' power seemed to be doing neither of them much good, and Vanessa had recently been seen in this small town, which meant something was going on. The Daemoni simply didn't hang out here, not anywhere on this little key in the Aegean Sea that was the Amadis Island's closest neighbor. Too many Amadis passed through here on their way to and from our island, and many came for a day or weekend of mainstreaming without wandering too far away from the safety of our haven. So Vanessa being here was perplexing, as well as bold and stupid on her part. Except the vampire wasn't stupid, which meant she wouldn't be here alone for long. The Daemoni seemed to be planning an ambush, and our current strategy was for me to hear her thoughts and learn their plan. She'd also stolen something precious from me, and I needed it back. Unfortunately, I hadn't been able to find her mind signature tonight, so here I was, hoping to pick up a thought of someone who'd seen her today or knew where she stayed. The sensory overload made my head pound and set my teeth on edge. The packs of women not so discreetly waiting their turns to hit on my husband certainly didn't help my mood. Tristan's long and hard body leaned against the bar on the other side of the room from me, blue and green lights from the dance floor flashing over his perfect features. An American girl in a sundress and stilettos twirled her red hair around her fingers as she and a similarly dressed brunette talked to him. More small groups of women stood nearby at the bar and tables, stealing glances his way to see if he'd dismissed these two yet. After all, he'd been dismissing foolish women practically falling at his feet all night. But for some reason, each newcomer thought she'd be the exception. His eyes slid over to me, and he smirked. I fought the ridiculously immature but overwhelming urge to stick my tongue out. Instead, I turned away from him and gave my full attention to the intoxicated Greek god offering to buy me a drink. Well, I tried my best to give it to him, but I could barely provide more than a forced smile while my mind scanned the thoughts of the women talking to Tristan. If they knew anything about the vampire bitch, they weren't thinking about her. In fact, their minds were pretty focused on how they'd be willing to give Tristan a threesome if that's what it took to get him into bed. No wonder he was smirking. Just breathe, I reminded myself again. It was your idea to separate. This is your own doing. Right. I needed to focus. Even if I didn't find Vanessa, scanning mind signatures and thoughts in this kind of environment provided good practice, which I needed. I'd acquired the telepathy during my young Dora over a year ago, but hadn't really embraced it until last September to protect Tristan from being banished for betrayal and to save the Amadis by exposing the real traitor. But since then, the only people I could practice my gift on were the people in the Amadis village, and they were nothing compared to this, especially since the Amadis knew I could hear their thoughts and kept them subdued, while here, thoughts exploded from inebriated minds like fireworks, some bright and cheery, and others simply loud and obnoxious. I could hardly fathom how all these people could be here partying it up with everything else going on in the world. Of course, they didn't know what I did. The increased homicide rates, animal attacks, and missing persons reports weren't solely a result of depressive economies and political unrest, but rather the workings of the Daemoni.